So OPPO has just introduced the new Reno13 and Reno13 Pro. What a shock for those of you who just bought the Reno12 on the good end. Well, but these have just been introduced in China, and it's probably going to take OPPO about 6 months to introduce them globally. That's why we see this lag when in some countries we're barely enjoying one version, in China they're introducing the new version. It is something we have constantly criticized OPPO, but it continues with this strategy. The design of this new series is renewed and honestly looks very nice and very nice. It seems to have a new rounded corner, a little more accentuated, a camera module also slightly nicer than the last generation. In fact, some say it reminds them a bit of the iPhone design. On the base model, we are going to find a 6.59-inch screen, while in the Pro model, the screen goes up to 6.83 inches. In both cases, we are talking about an AMOLED screen with 1.5K resolution, only that the base model has a completely flat screen, while the Pro model has a screen with curvatures on the sides. Both screens achieve very good brightness and feature a high dimming rate, as well as touch sampling. The processor is the MediaTek 8350, the same processor that OPPO is using in the OPPO Pad 3. This is a processor that, as I told you, is built by TSMC in a 4nm process. So even though we haven't tested it because it's a relatively new processor, we can anticipate that it's going to give us good performance, although I don't think it's the most powerful in the range. However, this device also debuts a new chip manufactured by OPPO focused on antenna management. So with this, you take a bit of work away from the processor so that it can dedicate itself to doing other things. Or rather, the chipset to be more specific. Both models integrate a vibration motor on the X-axis to have a very premium feedback when playing games or interacting with the system. And they come with Android 15 and ColorOS 15, which one of its most advertised new features is the ability to share images or videos with an iPhone. Although the iPhone must install an app, so I don't see the feature as novel, but it's something OPPO is advertising a lot. Regarding the cameras, we will see differences, since the base model includes a 2-rear camera arrangement. The main one is a 50-megapixel Sony IMX882 sensor with optical stabilization and an 8-megapixel ultra-wide camera. As you realize, it doesn't seem to be that advanced in this matter. Although the front camera does get pretty advanced because it is 50 megapixels and even supports recording in 4K at 60 frames per second, so I think OPPO gives a good priority to selfies in this series. The main camera has f1.8 aperture, while the ultra-wide camera has f2.2 aperture. And in both cases we see autofocus, so the ultra-wide camera would also serve as a macro camera. So I appreciate that they didn't put in an additional macro camera just for marketing. And to show off that they have 3 cameras, I think it's better utilized this way. The Pro model also integrates a 50 megapixel main camera, but in this case they use the Sony IMX890 sensor. That is a higher end sensor. This main camera has f-aperture 1.8 and obviously has autofocus and optical stabilization. The second camera is 8 megapixels, ultra-wide with f-aperture 2.2 and autofocus to function as a macro camera. But the surprise is the third camera, which in this case fortunately is again a telephoto camera that we had lost last generation in a very strange way. Its focal length is 80 millimeters, so the approximate optical zoom is 3.5x. But not only does it have a good optical zoom, but it has a high resolution sensor. We're talking about 50 megapixels, so together they can reach a maximum zoom 100x, which obviously won't show that much detail anymore, but hopefully at 50x or 30x it will still show good detail, considering that OPPO has some of the best photography algorithms today. So I have high expectations for the photographic results that this camera can give us. The aperture is f2.8, so it is not such a bright lens, but in conjunction with the high-resolution sensor, I think they can also achieve positive things. The front camera is the same as the base model, 50 megapixels, with the ability to record in 4K at 60 frames per second. On the battery, we'll see 5,600 and 5,800 milliamp hours respectively. So there is a very small difference, but it is great news to see high-capacity batteries in the mid-range, where manufacturers usually bet on simpler batteries of 5,000 milliamp hours. In addition, in both cases they support Super VC charging at 80 watts as it should be, and even the Pro model adds 50 watt wireless charging, so I definitely think the Pro model justifies the Pro surname. In addition, we will now find metal frame in these devices to have a much more advanced construction. And in fact, they also have the IP68 and IP69 level of resistance against water, dust, and pressurized hot water jets. So they gain a tremendous amount of ruggedness over the last generation. I love these improvements. We're going to find in-display fingerprint reader, stereo sound, and the base model is 7.24 millimeters thick. It's really very thin, considering the good battery capacity it has. Also, it weighs only 181 grams. I definitely think it can become an excellent device, but it will all depend on the price. The Pro model is also very slim, at 7.55 millimeters thick and weighing 197 grams. The base model is available in purple, blue, and black, while the Pro model swaps blue for a pink edition. The simplest model has 12 gigabytes of RAM with 256 gigabytes of storage, and its advertised price for China is 2,699 yuan. That's roughly $370. Although remember that prices here are not the same as over there. By the way, for anyone interested in the data, the storage is UFS 3.1 and the RAM is LPDDR5X. This model has higher RAM and storage configurations as the top model has 16 gigabytes of RAM and 1 terabyte of storage. But now let me tell you about the price of the Pro model. Its most basic configuration is also 12 gigabytes of RAM with 256 gigabytes of storage, and its announced price for China is 3,399 yuan. That's roughly $470, but please remember that the prices here are not the same as over there. It also has UFS 3.1 storage and LPDDR RAM 5X. Undoubtedly, as I tell you, these are devices that offer good features, good design, and everything is practically positive. Only because of these improvements, I am almost sure that in Mexico will increase its price compared to the current generation that seems to me too expensive for what it offers. But let's wait, because as I told you from the beginning, it will probably be about 6 months before this device is announced in Mexico and other countries.